Hello, welcome to our show. My name is Adrian. And this is my co-host Rose AJ, Coach Rose for Life, Carnivore Girl for Life. Tonight we are going to start a series called Carnivore Connections, where we just talk about things that we have in common and how it's affected our journey. I know my journey really hit the spotlight about 18 years ago when I was on the TV show The Biggest Loser. Rose, could you tell us how your journey kind of started?
Well, Adrian, to be quite candid, my journey started as early as 3.5 years old, but my latest attempt to get my life right started in 2018 when I hit rock bottom. So I believe that today's show, we're going to be talking about childhood trauma and how it's impacted us and maybe how food addiction started for us. Yeah. Yeah. So you
Yes,
can take
sorry, I
the
just
lead,
got
sister.
nervous.
No, you can take the lead with it and you can go first because I love to talk. So I want you to be able to
Okay.
get some words in.
Like Rose said, for both of us, the food eating issues started early. For me, growing up, I had first and foremost, I want to make sure everybody knows, especially the older I get, I realize I had a fantastic father and I am so blessed. But he got dealt a very tough hand. At 22 years old, he was left with two little girls, an 18-month-old baby and a newborn. So he is this young guy, just fresh in the workforce with these little kids. And so life was pretty rough with a single dad, you know? He had to work all the time to support us. And we had to move in with family. We had to move in with his mom, to make ends meet. Things are a lot different today. There wasn't quite the support that there is today for single parents with the government and stuff. It was very much he was on his own. So we moved in with my grandma who really suffered from alcoholism. So we've got a dad who's working all the time. My mother figure is struggling with an addiction problem. There's a lot of verbal issues going on there. I'm being left with babysitters a lot because my dad is doing the very best he can and finding who he can to consistently watch us, which isn't always the best person. And there were some issues with some of the babysitters. So, but my dad, again, loving guy. Every moment he could, he was taking us camping, he was taking us swimming. I got to be in activities. I had no idea, honestly, that I had a rough life. I didn't until I was a little bit older, and someone said, "Hey, how are you doing? That's pretty tough." I had no idea because my dad was doing the very best he could, and I had everything I needed. I was fed, I was clothed, I had a roof over my head. I always had adult supervision. Um, so then when I do remember though, before school even started, my sisters were already making fun of me for being overweight. So I was literally overweight as a child, always overweight. And I remember just even as a child, them trying to limit my food and never having this feeling of being full. I had this feeling like I just wanted to keep eating. And they would say, like, that's it. This is all you get because you're overweight and you already ate 4 plates of spaghetti like a grown man. And so you have to stop eating now. And I remember leaving and being like, gosh, all I would think about is food. Even as a kid, that was my comfort. Um, so then I start school and there's a lot of bullying going on because again, I'm overweight and I was pushed and I had rocks thrown at me and there was a kid that followed me around for years and said boom every time I stepped because he said I was shaking the world. He said I was shaking China. I heard every single fat joke in the world. So you've got some parent abandonment. My mom is gone. You've got a parental figure that's struggling with addiction. You've got your main parental figure working 24/7 to make ends meet. You've got babysitters that aren't optimal, that are in not great neighborhoods, not great situations. I remember being scared sometimes at babysitters because we were in bad neighborhoods and I didn't feel comfortable playing outside, but I was required to. Um, so that is my really early life, is that this has been a thing my whole life. My identity has been I am an overweight person and I'm not supposed to eat. And that I'm different than everyone else. I'm bigger, I'm less than because of my eating. And that's such a sad thing to place on a child. And we still do that today. My son also struggles with weight, and he's being told by other people that he needs to eat less. But I watch
Mm.
his best friends who are taller than him weigh 50 pounds less than him eating two pizzas. Nobody ever says anything to the pizza kid, but they do say something to my kid who's trying to watch what he eats. We put this eating disorder on kids. Did you have something
How
to
d
say?
Yeah, how do you handle that as a mama?
I feel really blessed to have stumbled upon what we have stumbled upon
Yeah,
in knowing
yeah,
that the problem here isn't my son's eating, it's
right.
his metabolism, it's his hormones. I think he has the same genetics I do, where we're not properly storing and processing our energy. So, and for me, I don't have to eat that much to gain weight. I mean, there
Yeah,
were times I was eating 800 calories a day and training for a half marathon and putting on 15 pounds.
mm,
I recently
mm.
have been Lion Diet and I'm eating 2,000 calories a day. I'm walking 5 to 10 miles a day and I put on 13 pounds overnight and I did
You
not change what I was eating.
you put
So,
on?
yes, that happened within a couple weeks ago and it hasn't come off yet, but that's another story that we're going to get
Yeah.
into later,
Yeah,
like
I
our
was gonna say,
lifelong health and wellness.
yeah. Oh my
So,
goodness.
so for this guy, I tell him, I feel like it's such a blessing to get to tell him, David, you didn't do something wrong. He's
Right.
not sitting up there binge eating. I know he's not.
Yeah,
And he's not allowed to do that at his dad's house either because me and him are split, which so
okay,
he has some trauma as well. He's
okay.
got some comfort that he needs as well. But I know that he's not binge eating. It's his
Yeah,
metabolism. And I say,
mm,
buddy, for you, you're going to have to be like me. We're going to have to focus on meat. We're going to have
yeah,
to focus on movement. So I'm going to
mm,
mute for a second so you can start
okay.
telling some of your early story because I can hear my kids fighting.
Well, let them fight, as I like to say. Let them fight. They can come. This is real life, right? So, Adrian, a lot like you, I was an only child where it sounds like you had a papa who was really working hard, trying to provide, even though he was a single parent, trying to get resources for his children. I, on the other hand, spent the first couple of years with my grandmother because my biological father was in the army, the Vietnam War, yada, yada, yada. And I was sexually, physically, mentally, and emotionally abused as early as 3.5 years old. And the reason that I can remember 3.5 years old, because I was clearly in California. I was with my cousins and they had a dog, and I was eating dry dog food, raw ground beef, petroleum jelly, just the whole nine. And then my father comes back, picks me up at 5 years old, and he has a wife, and his wife is Korean. And I had never really been exposed to anybody that didn't look like me, right? So that was a very trying ordeal. And my biological father sexually abused me physically, mentally, emotionally. So from 3.5 to just after 17, I had all these occurrences. And, food was a constant for me. A constant for me. It was a constant comfort. It was a constant best friend. I don't know if you ever went to church and you were given like 50 cents to put in church, but the money that I was given to put in church, I went to the corner store. Back then it was a corner store, but it might be like considered 7-Eleven to buy Jolly Ranchers and chips and stuff like that. I never put it in the offering plate. And I remember at 12 going on my first diet with two of my cousins. And dieting, X-Lax, Tab, it became my way of life at 12 years old. And as I look back, I was uber thin, but that really doesn't mean anything about metabolism and how your body is processing food and whatnot. I ate a lot of junk food, tons and tons of sugar. I never experimented with drugs, like illegal drugs, because that just wasn't my jam and I was terrified of them. But I did do some experimentation with alcohol, and that wasn't a real big win for me. But food was the biggest win ever, and it stayed with me. And it actually to this day, but I'm more mindful and I'm not triggered and I'm not going insane because of the foods that I choose to eat versus the ones that I did back then. So if that can give you any background, and I just identified all my friendships, how I dealt with the world, if I was stressed, blessed, happy, sad, glad, it was always through food. What am I going to eat next? I'm eating breakfast and I'm going to get a second breakfast at Denny's. I go to work, I have a big bag of food with me just to make it through 8 hours. I go home, I eat. I cook dinner, I eat. So that was literally my life. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah. In high
Did you
school,
have the never full thing too?
I don't know if it was the never full thing so much as I needed to just stuff down the emotions, stuff down the feelings. I needed to stay uber charged, if you know what I'm saying, because I have a hyper personality anyway. But during the down times, I needed food to pick me back up, the sugar, the cookies, the candies to keep me elevated and to keep my mood swings at bay. But a lot of that, as I look back now, was a lot of mental health issues. Yeah, a lot of mental health issues that were fueled by the foods that I was eating. Yeah.
There was I was also a super anxious person. Everybody could feel it around me constantly. I had that anxiety until the carnivore diet. It didn't matter what drugs you put me on. It's this constant anxiousness. So one of the things I translated this into
Mhm.
when I got into high school was sports. And I don't know about you, did you compare yourself to a lot of people? Because I was constantly comparing myself to other people and basing my worth on other people.
I don't know if I was so much comparing, except for like the magazines, wishing that I was actually thinner, but not necessarily comparing to my classmates, if that's what you mean. Yeah.
It's one of the things that I kind of fluffed over that was really, really hard was my grandma was incredibly verbally abusive. My dad wasn't married when he had me, and so she just constantly called me an effing little bastard. Constantly. That was my name for the first 10 years of my life was effing little bastard. So you got the kids
Mm.
at school telling me I'm just a fat bastard and all the jokes, and then you got my only mother figure calling me an effing little bastard, and then you've got my mom is gone, gone. And so I thought, like from deep inside, since I was just tiny, that I am just an effing little bastard.
Mm. Sorry
And
to
I've
hear it.
really had to work on that. That I think that's part of the comparing myself to other people too is like, am I? Am I like what am I? Am I really that, am I this thing? Am I unlovable? There's a
Mhm.
huge unlovable piece there. And really having to work on that to this day.
It's funny that you should say that. Not funny, haha, but it's funny that you should say that because I think a lot of my issues also stemmed from not knowing my biological mother. I have heard rumors about her being, a baby maker and leaving her kids on the wayside. So I was supposedly left on the doorstep of the local church, right? And how true it is, I'll never really know. And I just remember a glimpse of perhaps meeting her, but maybe that's a memory that was embedded through conversation. And I had a half brother that I vaguely remember playing trains with at about 4 or 5. But there again, it might have been through conversation that I picked up on that. My relationships with mother figures were never very solid or healthy because the women that were in my life that I thought should protect me, serve me, help me, provide comfort never did. Even when I lived with my aunts and I thought I was safe, I really wasn't because they blamed me for things that had happened. And yeah, I just swore never to be that kind of mother, right? Never to be that kind of mother, but I never had a mother figure to look up to. So I think that's a part of my ongoing issue too, is to just make sure that I'm the healthiest me and that I'm not eating out of what I would hope is a mother figure or for that long lost memory that I never really cultivated and stuff like that. So what about you, and your biological mom? Is there a relationship, or do you or ties severed, or
So I remember, I think I was like 5, and there was this one babysitter we did like, she had an iguana. So I just remember this, but still at everybody's house, I felt like out of place. I never felt at home. I just wanted to go home. And I never was at home. And so that discomfort, like my comfort was that food. And I remember when the meal would end, that comfort was all gone. And
yeah.
I remember being at this one good babysitter's house and that we went down to the candy store one day and she saw my mom. And my mom didn't even say hi or notice I existed, pretended like she didn't even see us. And then shortly after that, my mom tried to start coming back into our lives. It's It's a really hard one because
Okay.
she just wasn't ready to be a mom,
Yeah.
and she's not capable of being honest about what happened.
Okay.
And when I talk to my family, and I've never talked about this publicly, when I talk to even her sister, even her mom, they admit that my mom abandoned me. But my mom's
Mm,
story is that my dad kidnapped us and he's the villain. To this
okay.
day, so I have to set up boundaries with her because
Yes.
my dad was my protector. My dad was my hero. My dad stuck around even when it got freaking tough. My dad
Yeah.
was doing everything he could to give me a good life. And here this woman is who abandoned me is making up these
Mm,
stories. There was there was a time at one of the babysitters where there was some doctor stuff going on.
okay.
My mom turned that story into
Mm,
child abuse and put it into the
mm,
courts and broadcasted it to the entire everybody who would listen, and it was completely false. It was completely
mm,
made up, and this is the type of stuff that we had to then deal with for the next
yeah.
13 years.
Yeah.
I do want to say something positive because I am Mrs. Positive.
Yes.
When I turned 10, well, I remember I've always loved my dad, and I was always like, I wish my dad would find some love, but he was in a really
Mhm.
tough spot. He had these little girls, he's got a lot of expenses. He's living with his mom, who also needs help. So he's a caregiver for his mom. He's a caregiver for me and my sister. His sister is also schizophrenic. So
Okay.
he's got all these family members he's taking care of, and he's like the only sane one working. It's the
Mhm. Mhm.
this loony stuff is going on, and this guy just keeps on going. I remember asking a lady at a grocery store, "Would you please be my mom? My dad really needs someone. He's a really good guy. Look at how cute he is." I was
Oh,
constantly
yeah.
trying to find someone. And
Yeah.
when I turned 10, he met my stepmom. And my stepmom came in and saw like how much my grandma was struggling and how hard that was for me and my sister. And she said, "This has to stop." So she got
Mm,
my grandma some help.
mhm.
I'm
Mm,
I wanna say too, there was a
yeah.
lot of time when I was really upset with my grandma, and
Yeah.
now I feel like as I have struggled with food addiction and
Mhm.
alcohol, I quit alcohol about 10, 11 years ago. As I have struggled with these things too, and I have friends who've struggled with them too.
Yeah.
I feel compassion for her, and I remember those times when she did get sober, and I remember her wanting it so bad, but the disease just sucked, and
Yes.
she did die
Yes.
from that.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
So,
that.
it's very sad. But when I turned 10, I am so fortunate. Some people
Yeah.
don't get this turnaround. I
Yes.
did. I got this mom in my life for the first time, and she's still
Yeah.
here. They're about to celebrate 30 years married.
That is
So
amazing.
I'm telling you guys trauma because
Yeah.
it's deep in there, and it's something that sometimes these inner things that were built in there pop out. Sometimes I still have to work on those things. Sometimes when things aren't going right in my life, I go, "Oh, of course, because
It
I'm
all
not
makes
lovable,
sense. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is what I deserve." My first marriage, which we'll
Yeah.
get into that age later, right?
Sure.
My first marriage, I
Mhm.
married a combination of my mom and my grandma. I married someone who treated me like dirt,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I thought that's what I deserve.
You
But sorry,
know,
can you?
No,
Any
no,
comments
no,
on your end?
no. So there's a lot of comments from Nourish Redacted. It says, "Hello,
Ellie.
ladies. Hi, Nourishment Redacted. Nia's way. Hi, y'all. It's Ellie." And Nia, hello, bestie. Biggest Loser Carnivore, you said hello, thank you for coming. Thank you, Nourishment Redacted, for saying that she's sorry that that happened. And Nia's way is catching up on laundry while listening. Thank you so very much. And VS006, I am so glad you're here, girlfriend or guy friend. I don't know if you're a girl or a guy, but you comment a lot and I do appreciate you. Emotional eating was something that I struggled with too, with Nourishment Redacted. So, how are you coming along? Do you know her name? Nourishment Redacted?
Ellie.
Do you know her?
Ellie.
Oh, Ellie. Ellie, how are you coming along with your emotional eating? And then she also says that she never knew her father. He rejected her at birth, carried his last name her whole life until she got married, found him 4 years ago, and he never reached out. And I got rejected again. Hi, Tina. How are you doing, girlfriend? I hope that you're doing well. I often think of you and you and everybody else. Let me just put it that way, girlfriend. But I hope we can be in touch. Just real quick, Ron and Sean are still in touch, Tina. Um, I'm a girl, Valeria. Valeria. Okay, thank you. Okay. So let me interject here. I am so happy that you found a mother figure came into your life and that your father, is in a good, solid, healthy and happy relationship and that you and your sibling is benefiting from that. I think when it comes to parents and parenting and stuff, I often say that I hope that I don't die with resentments because they do rise periodically. I have to catch myself, right? Being resentful of the lack of
Yes.
parenting that I had. But it doesn't do me any good not to address it either and to say that I'm just great at 56, almost 57, because I'm not, because there's still that little girl part of me that wants to be acknowledged and adored and crowned with glory that this is my daughter, this is what she's doing, she comes to visit me on Sundays, that kind of thing. But I try to let go of that, but it still crops up and it shows its ugly head sometimes in the form of depression or sometimes with the way I am choosing to overeat. And I use that very candidly, choosing to overeat to get through a stressful moment in time or some discomfort, and right? Hi, Kim. Yeah. So, do you have any resentments, maybe, Adrian, from maybe your grandmother, the way she treated you, or maybe your father not rescuing you and saying, please don't talk to my daughter that way? Do you have any of those thoughts that you had to work through from childhood?
So my dad, he if he was ever present when she was being abusive, he would get in her face. He was very
Mm,
protective. And I think where it would come in is sometimes he would need some help and she would pretend like she's totally fine. And so he would
mm,
leave us with her from time to time. And that's when it would come out when he's not around.
okay,
He
okay.
would never put up with that. But then, when I don't remember exactly, but I'm going to assume that's why he hired babysitters instead of just leaving us. He never
Good.
just left me with her to be her. Never. And I remember very much every time he caught her drinking, him
Mm,
getting in her face and being
mm,
very serious. It was
okay.
very serious. And so my dad didn't leave me like that. There was a lot of
Okay.
resentment for a long time because my dad's really strict. But as I've grown, I've realized he was just
Mm,
making me the best person he could. And now I kind of,
right.
every day that goes on, I admire that
Mhm.
man more.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think about how sad it was to be left with babysitters all the time, but like, what's he supposed to do?
Mhm,
Is
mhm.
he are we supposed to be homeless? You
Right,
he had to pay
right.
all the bills for all of us and in more of like a skilled entry level type of job, not like,
Yeah.
he went to college for like a technical type of thing, but he ended up
Okay.
working at a rental store. And so sorry, the admiration just keeps going on because he worked at the rental store and now he owns the rental store. So
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm talking about the sad stuff only because it's in there and
Mhm.
because life hasn't always been roses. But overall, I feel like an incredibly blessed woman between
Right?
my stepmom, my dad, so many things. Now resentment with my mom.
Mhm.
This is something that's grown over time. Now that I've seen, like, the things that she accused my dad of are things that my ex-husband actually does.
Okay.
So I think to myself sometimes, I've been asking myself, could my mom be telling the truth? But then I ask her family and they're like, her version isn't very accurate. But
Okay.
here's what I have gained.
Okay.
Imagine being a mom and being young and not ready to have kids. You're just not ready. So you leave because maybe that's the best thing that you can do because you're not ready. And then you come back because you think that you are ready. And
Mm.
you're like, please, these are my children. Please. And nobody's giving them back.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much trauma my mom is carrying around? And she can't be honest about it, but she
Yeah.
is carrying a lot of trauma around. And for that, I have a lot of compassion. So today we have a relationship, but sometimes I have to put up boundaries. And
Okay.
sometimes I need distance and space because her version of reality is different than my version of reality. And it's really hurtful when she throws it in my face constantly. And I won't put up with her talking about my dad like that.
Good. Good for you.
How about you? How are your resentments? What did you do to get through them? And
So I think my resentments, I really just let them play out through eating, play out through binge eating, just play out that way, stuffing them down. I was never a journaler. I've never been to therapy. I did a lot of bibliotherapy, and I still do that to this day. But I think it was just easier for me to continue to blame the way my life turned out because I wasn't helped the way I needed to be helped as a young person. But when you said that your first husband was a combination of your mother and your grandmother, I think in reality that the man that I married is actually my father, right? In the sense that I can do whatever I need to do, whatever I want to do, so long as things are okay. He doesn't bother me. So I tell people a lot that I'm a married but single woman, right? So our relationship is kind of like roommates for like the last 24 years, shared space, own property, but it's comfortable for us, right? It's comfortable. But sometimes I sit back and think, had I have, worked through my issues or, went to therapy, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have settled for the life that I have right now. But the settling that I'm doing, Adrian, is really, really, really good, right? Because it works for me, right? And I honestly don't think that God could have sent me a better man to handle me because he doesn't handle me. He doesn't bother me, right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Yeah.
yeah,
So, yeah, as far as resentments, when they do crop up now, it's just what it is. I just accept it that, yeah, so what? My life didn't turn out the way I wanted it, or my childhood didn't turn out the way I wanted it. So what? Now what? Is the way I deal with that. And I just try never to repeat that in my relationship with my daughter or my grandchildren. Yeah.
yeah, my coping is I never had parents around, so I became a stay-at-home mom. You know,
Oh,
I want my kids to feel loved and nurtured, and I know that it's not necessary to stay home to do that, but for me, if it was at all possible, which it wasn't for the first 5 years. My oldest
sure.
is 12. It wasn't possible for the first 5 years, but when it became possible, it's meant so much to me even though it's really hard, and even though I have no mom figure. Like, my stepmom came in when I was 10. There was nobody showing me how to take care of little kids. I was never taken care of. Part of the reason I turn to food is because when I get sick is my big one. When I get sick, I just want my mom to take care of me, and I
Yeah,
never had that.
yeah,
I've never had that. And
yeah,
so I wanna comfort eat because that's
yeah.
what I had. And so
Oh.
when my kids get sick, I try not to be mad because I don't get any sleep. Try to hold
But
them and
it's
tell
so
them it's
worth
gonna be
it.
okay, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So you said that you're staying at home with your children, and I'm gonna go here out on a limb. So I worked opposite of my husband. I worked weekends, I worked in the evening because I didn't want my daughter to be with anyone else in care other than us. And when she went to preschool, it was only like for 2.5 hours a day. So I did everything that I needed to do to make money, but to still be at home with her, if that makes sense. We went out of our way to make it work because of my childhood trauma. I didn't want her exposed to the same things. And then with her children, being twins, I would take off one weekday, and my husband was on disability by the time that they were born. So he took care of them 4 days a week, and I took care of them one day a week. So they've never been in formal daycare, right? Because I'm just really terrified of what may happen if they come across somebody who doesn't have their best interest at heart. And I don't know if you know, I did corrections for 23 years. So I saw sources of things that I wouldn't want anybody in today's world to be exposed to. But are you able to read some of the comments over here on the left?
I see I don't know if you already read this, but it said it's incredible to think how we all have things we've gone through in our past that are painful and how carnivore brings them up and it's like a cleansing. I do want to say my first 6 to 9 months of carnivore,
Mhm.
I was able to ignore it. I was,
Were you?
I was like, well, I was able, well, I started feeling the nervous system relaxing. So I just
Okay.
automatically felt better. The weight was kind of coming off. And
Yeah.
so I just kept rolling with it, and it wasn't part of my healing until the weight loss stopped. And then I hired an addiction coach,
Okay.
and that is when I had to really start facing it. But I also want to say 99% of my work has been
Mhm.
done in a 12-step program when I quit drinking 11 years ago. And
Ooh, can
I feel like everybody should do it. We would live in utopia. You know the utopia
mhm.
people always talk about? If every single person worked a 12-step program, we would live in utopia.
Well, let's go there for a little bit, Adrian, if you don't mind. So I shared that I never did drugs because this is your brain on drugs, the egg frying on a sidewalk. I grew up with that. I don't know if that was a campaign when you were
Yeah.
growing up,
Yep.
but I literally believed it, right? And the closest that I ever came to being in the room with drugs was two of my friends from high school, Kim and Kamitra. They were smoking a joint. And they tried to pass it to me. And I was like, "No, I gotta go home." And they teased me forever about that, right? And then when I first met my husband, maybe a couple of weeks after I met him, we were pretty hot and heavy early, if you know what I'm saying. And one night he was like, "Well, I did a line." And I'm like, "You did a line of what?" And it was, the white stuff. And I was like, "No, we can't do that because that makes me nervous. I get stressed out. I don't do anything like that." So from that point on, it wasn't an issue. But drugs have always scared me. Prescription drugs have always scared me. So that's not my jam. But I did tinker with alcohol several times in high school. And it quickly became a second addiction. A weekend, I became a weekend drinker for a stretch of time also. So would you like to talk a little bit about that? So my personal belief and what I know is that addiction is one disease and it has multiple outlets. But food has
Mhm.
always remained my outlet. And then
Mhm.
alcohol for a short amount of time was coming up to a close second. So would you like to share about any of that if
Yeah,
you
let's
have?
start with my first addiction was definitely orange juice and bread. It's like I couldn't stop. And my family would actually call me Adrian Bread Mackie, that's my maiden name, because I just couldn't stop. So, like, at a meal, we always had bread. I could eat an entire loaf as a child, an entire loaf with butter on it. And then I also would drink an entire pitcher of orange juice in a morning. And so it's no wonder, some of the things I look back and I'm like, whoa. But so when I got into college, so I translated all of my issues, and I still do this, and I don't intend to change, just so you all know. Of my value is how hard I work, I think. So when I was in high school, I joined every single sport. So I was in, and then I wanted to lead them all. And then I was in band and choir and drama and yearbook, and I had to lead them all. And I booked every minute from the moment I woke up till the moment I went to sleep. And I didn't sleep much, and I worked. So,
Right,
and I do that to
right.
this day. It's like a cross addiction almost to be busy. I don't know. So, yep.
So I was gonna say, with that cross addiction, lack of sleep, wanting to check the boxes, to do it all, be it all, experience it all, I am still on that roller coaster, right? I'm still on that roller coaster, and I'm not sure if it's gonna ever get better, but I'm okay with that. What I lose
Me
out
too.
on is sleep, right? And, if that's all that I have to contend with, I'm okay with that. So I get
Yes,
it.
if my
I
cross
get it.
addiction is
Yeah.
production and, you know,
Yeah.
so then when I went to college, the flood doors of the alcohol opened, and I was so excited about it. Now, being the anxious, anxious, anxious person that I was, I don't feel that anymore now that I've gone carnivore. I don't. I don't feel that never-ending anxiousness in here. But I did. So the alcohol soothed that. And I remember just like I craved food in college, I craved alcohol. And this got this it got bad in the way that when I was on The Biggest Loser, I had this huge opportunity to maybe win $250,000, you know? But in between when we filmed the show and when we filmed the finale, there was, I don't know, 4 months or something, and I let the alcohol back in.
Mm,
And next thing you know, I'm being pulled over for drinking and driving.
oh my word.
And and I had a passenger who didn't turn 21 for a week, and we had an open container. So I got 3 tickets in one. Um, like every good alcoholic, it somehow got thrown out so that it
Mhm.
doesn't count, right? So
Yes,
I just
yeah.
keep on keeping on, even though my doctor's
Mhm.
telling me, listen, if you're getting pulled over for drinking and driving, you make bad decisions while you drink, and therefore you have a problem. And he's trying
Yes.
to help me. And I'm like, listen, I'm in college. You can't graduate unless you have a DUI.
Wow. Wow.
I went to the University of North Dakota, so that's half true, to be honest. But
Okay.
anyway,
Okay.
um, so I get married and I'm drinking this whole time. And as he's
Mhm.
treating me like crap, I just drink it away. We
Mm.
go to have our first baby. I don't drink. Well, and I'm a night and a weekend drinker, so therefore,
Yeah,
fine.
I
We
get
have our
it.
first baby. I'm totally sober during the pregnancy. I'm sober while I'm attempting to breastfeed, which is an issue for me, but because of hormones and stuff.
Mhm.
But the minute that the breastfeeding was over, it was back to the races, and I was falling on my face. And
Yeah.
thank God I got pregnant again, and I felt this relief of like, oh, thank God, I can't drink anymore. And that was when the
Mhm.
light bulb went off that this isn't going to work. So after I had her, I went back out for a few more weeks. I was peeing on the floor. Like, it was
Mhm, mhm,
hideous. It was
mhm,
hideous, Adrian. It was not cute. It was,
mhm.
and after a few weeks of that, I was like, we're not putting my kids through this. And that's when I
Sure,
went to the 12-step
sure.
program. But
So
then, so I get sober with my drinking. And then that's when it dawned on me, wow, I wish I could have this with food.
mm. Do you
Because when
think
you're
you
in
had
those
it
programs, they're giving you sugar. They're like, do anything but
yeah.
alcohol.
But do you think you had it with food simultaneously, but alcohol took the lead during that specific time?
Oh, yeah. The food
Yeah,
addiction was
yeah,
right in there
yeah.
too. And
Mhm.
so then I was thinking, so this is when I learned abstinence is great. How
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
abstain from eating?
Mm.
You
You
know?
know, so alcohol, drugs, whatever your drug of choice is, it can all be very tricky because we're highly intelligent and productive people, right? And we always think that it's somebody else's problem. Like you said, you're making it through college. You got your 3 tickets thrown out, yada yada yada. But somewhere along the way, it takes a really big wake up call. And I think for you, it was your second baby, you said. That was your wake up call that you were determined not to raise your kids around that. And for me, it was my daughter also, because by then I was in corrections, but I was a weekend drinker. So I had weekdays off. So I would do the wine bottle on my 2 nights off because I knew what would happen, right? If I had to go to work the next day and I had been drinking the night before, right? I'd be hungover and that's not good. But I was looking around for years on end at the inmates, and I finally understood what addiction was. They made choices that landed them there. They got caught, or whatever their situation was, right? Drugs, alcohol, robbery, whatever, murder that got them there. But I was making the same choices, except I didn't get caught. I didn't break any laws, right? But it was still addiction. There was still something that was impacting the quality of our lives. So I got that part and I didn't want to mirror that for my daughter. So I
Mhm.
put the weekend drinking down, but I didn't understand about sugar, carbs, binging, how I was role modeling that for her, right? And so it's still addictive behavior, even though the substance is legal.
Mhm.
So I don't want us to delve too far into addiction and how we overcame that or what we're doing with that, because that's going to be for next week's show. I think that would be a good topic to delve into. But what did you do when you were in your younger years to cope? Did you have any weight gain, or were you trying to be like uber thin or anything like that? Let's spend some time talking about that. What did you do in your younger years to
Before I
combat?
do that, I forgot one trauma.
Sure.
When my mom left my dad, she
Mhm.
started dating women, which is
Okay.
totally fine.
Sure.
But she made it her mission since since she's ever been in my life to make sure that I knew all things sexual, all things. She felt that that
Okay.
was necessary to teach little kids all the
Mm.
things. And she took us to drag shows. I
Mm.
remember my first drag show, a drag queen threw finger condoms at me, a child. So here's this drag queen throwing finger condoms at a child.
Mm, mm, mm.
So to this day, sorry, that's my baby, if you can hear
It's it's okay.
him.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
there's been times in my therapy where I've been red flagged for sexual abuse in my childhood.
Mm. Okay,
And I think that that's what it is. I think
okay.
it's having to know things that were
Mm.
inappropriate, that were not age appropriate at a
Yeah,
very, very young age. So, what my mom was accusing my dad of was
yes.
actually coming from her.
What she was doing, okay.
Yeah. And
Mm.
when I see this becoming more common these days, I'm really, really, really concerned for these kids because I've
Yeah,
lived it.
yeah.
I've lived being forced to know things that were not age appropriate my
Mm.
whole life. Okay, so what did you say? What that you
So
had said, what did
so
I
what you
how
said
did
was
I
pretty
try to be
well,
thin and stuff?
yeah, so what you said or what you just said is pretty heavy, and I just don't wanna skim over that. So, if parents are out there being too explicit in any capacity with their children, they need to understand from the conversation that you just shared that it can be very traumatizing for them, even though the parent might think that they're educating their child. What would be some words of wisdom that you could offer those parents to kind of like tone it down and maybe it really isn't necessary to share that with their children?
It's really hard because right now it's becoming, they're putting it in the schools. Like one of our school board members literally said, the younger, the better. And
What?
she just got reelected.
Oh.
So we really need to be active, not just like what you're personally doing, but we also need to be more active with our school boards. And this is something I'm super guilty of,
Mhm.
truly monitoring what they're watching on TV and their
Yeah,
iPads and their,
yeah,
all the things. This is like super hard work because it's everywhere. It's very similar to carnivore where we're being told,
yeah,
eat your veggies, stop
yeah,
eating that fat, eat
yeah.
vegetable fats. We're being told all the wrong things and it's
Mhm.
everywhere. And
Yes,
we really need to think like, what is the purpose of teaching children about sex? What are we
yes.
trying to get at here? And
Mhm.
is there some way we could slow that down and keep them innocent? Because it really does hurt them. In my case,
Yes, yes. It was like oversharing, oversharing, would you say? Yeah,
yeah,
oversharing.
I did not need to know what
Yeah,
lesbian
right.
versus heterosex
Yes.
was at
Yeah,
5.
yeah, right.
Um,
Okay.
so you had said too, though, did you want to keep talking about that one?
No, I'm good. I just didn't wanna let that go by us without exploring it or commenting on it a little bit more. So my question prior to that was, what did you do? Were you overweight, I guess, from like 10 to maybe 18? In that general age
Yeah, the
range. And
next
if
age
you
range. So I was overweight my
girl,
whole
wait a
life.
minute, let me finish my question. So if
I
you
love to
were
talk. That's why we're good. No?
I know. So if you were overweight between 8, 10 up to 18, because we're trying to keep the conversation 18 and younger, what did you do to keep your weight in check? What did you try to do as a young person? So I shared with you that I dieted, restricted, binged, Dexatrim, X-Lax, and Tab. Those were my key components that kept me in alignment, right? But what about you?
So when I was very little, I already weighed 100 pounds. Like, I can't remember when I didn't weigh 100. So let's go with 6 years old. I mean, I'm very young when I already weigh 100 pounds.
Okay.
And by the time I was in high school, I was 165. Maybe this was middle school. So late
Okay.
elementary, I'm 165 pounds. Back in our day, that was considered big. Today, it seems like that's becoming the standard. But
The norm.
I want to move on to, so I turned 10. My stepmom comes in my life. I'm going to guess she just started giving me confidence, I think. I mean, my stepmom is an engineer and an educated woman, a golfer, beautiful, successful, traveling the world when she meets my dad. And so I stood up to my bullies and I said, I am not fat. I didn't really believe what I was saying, but that's what I said. And they left me
Okay.
alone.
Right
And
on.
then I started playing. So part of this too was I was playing soccer constantly to like show those boys I might be fat, but I'm worthy. So then I become addicted to soccer. So in middle school, I'm playing soccer and basketball. And then in high school, I switch basketball to cross country skiing and I add track. And so I am working out sometimes twice a day. So I'm working out, working out, working out. My best friend's a cross country runner. We're just moving all the time. That was my cure, is to move all the time. That was it. So when I went to college and there's no more sports, now I'm still eating but not moving and I gained 60 pounds.
But wait a minute, did you consciously make a decision to go after and do all the sports, sometimes working out twice a day, in an effort to keep your weight in check? Or was it because you had the love of sports and friendships and camaraderie and all that stuff, or a combination?
I also restricted my food and I remember my parents even saying, "Wow, you are so dedicated. Like you are so go you." Because I would restrict what I was eating
Yeah.
until I drank a whole pitcher of orange juice, until I ate a whole loaf of bread. It'd be like restrict and binge, restrict and binge. And meanwhile, I'm working out like crazy to try to keep my weight out. But the second part is I still don't value myself. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to find value by competing and trying to win, because then maybe other people will value me and maybe I'll value myself. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I went on The Biggest Loser and I lose all this weight and I realize, wait a second, it doesn't, I'm the same person, whether I'm 230 pounds or I'm 160 pounds, I'm the same person. But now people are starting to value me. And what's
Mhm.
going on here? But I still
Yeah.
stayed in a devaluing marriage. So it wasn't until I quit drinking and started my 12-step program where I learned to value myself and others.
Right. So, can we hold the conversation there because you've mentioned the 12-step program several times, and then maybe we can start off our next show with that because for me, 12-step, anything that has steps, I'm automatically rogue. I automatically turn off, and I want to know, how did you choose the program and how did you stay with it? So I don't want us to kind of get lost in the shuffle on that, but we will start with that. So let me roll through a couple of these
Yes,
comments.
we have some really good
Um,
comments.
okay, so Tina, I'm glad you're good. Please tell Nene I said hello and happy Mother's Day. Kim, you're cooking, making beef cheeks for dinner. Girlfriend, I can't wait to see you on Saturday. It's incredible to think how we all have things we've gone through in our past that are painful and how carnivore brings them up. It's like a cleansing. What would you say to that, Adrian? How carnivore brings them up? It's like a cleansing. How would you respond to that? Or can you kind of spin off of that what you think she's saying?
I think that we get, at least for me, my nervous system stopped being such a wreck that I'm able to start managing some of those
Yeah.
feelings. Because before, when you're like all the time, it's
Mhm.
impossible to get over it. It's
Mhm.
impossible
Mhm.
to feel calm because your whole nervous system is a wreck. So I think
Right.
that nourishment, it also is good for our brain. So that's got to be putting some of those receptors back. And we get to be full so we can start looking into, well, when I'm not full,
Mhm.
what's going on there versus being hungry kind of all the time, never
Yeah.
really being satiated for more than 30 minutes. Now it's
Mhm.
hard to deal with that because versus every night I start craving food. What's up with
Mhm.
that?
Mhm.
Let's deal with it. What do you think? What do you think she means by the cleansing?
So what I think is that we have mental clarity, a lot
Mhm.
more mental clarity, that room has been made to deal with what we've been suppressing, right? Because our brains really do get hijacked depending on the foods that we choose. If they're processed or they're carb laden, sugar laden, our brains really do get hijacked, in our emotions too. And
Mhm.
so I think that that's what that means from my perspective, that there's just a transparency, a clarity that's going on. There's nothing weighing us down, and we can actually deal with what is weighing us down. Yeah. So let's see.
PS says, I get it, Rose. It's what you have now. You're being appreciative of the joy you have now, not the destination of joy.
Yes. Amen. And then do you want to read Mary Shepherd's right below that?
Yes, QQQ, confession. I still drink beer. It's the only non carnivore thing she has in her diet. How do you stop? To me, you just have to write your why down because I have the same problem with decaf. And because it's the only thing left that's non carnivore in there, I don't know if I'm super worried for you. I feel like it's just that one piece that you have to be ready to remove, and you got to write your why down and just make the commitment. What do you
Yes.
think, Rose?
So what is she saying? Non-carnivore food drink I've had. I don't know. Oh, beer. So hers is beer. So for me, I stopped drinking in 2018. I mean, even just recreationally, just stopped drinking in 2018 because it was having an impact on my mental health. And I would
Mhm,
think that beer is serving a purpose for her, like soothing, comfort, just
mhm,
carrying her through a moment or two. And as far as how do you stop, I hate to say this, you just freaking stop. Unless you're a heavy user and you're dependent and you might go through alcohol withdrawals, but if you're a casual drinker of maybe 1 or 2 beers a day and you're not having any physical or biological side effects, then just stop. But if you are really hooked, you might need help getting off of that. So definitely see a medical provider, but you just stop. You just stop.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
I like this comment here from VS006. The
uh-huh.
addictiveness of heavy cream is real. We know. Had to go no contact. It is very comforting, and it does make us
Yeah.
all gain weight, but she stopped about 3 weeks ago. That's
Okay.
awesome.
3 weeks ago. That's never been my jam. That's never been something that I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to have it. You know what I'm saying? It's never been
My
something,
arm is
but it is.
shaking just thinking about getting some right now.
Oh, so that's your jam? Yeah.
Oh, I love to whip some heavy cream, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you too fancy for me, girl. Give it to me black and I'm good. Black coffee is good.
Yeah?
So, yeah. Do you want to read Nia's Way, Mary Shepherd at Mary Shepherd, her comment,
She made a
please?
short-term goal to quit until about 5 months, so just take it one day at a time until she hit 5 months. She ate carnivore during that time, and when she got to her goal, she realized that her cravings were gone. That's super good
Mhm.
advice. Make a short goal and
Yes,
get
and
through those
then
cravings.
yeah. So how do you deal with cravings, Adrian, if you have any, like for the cream or maybe a particular item? How do you deal with cravings if you have any of anything?
I'm gonna be honest. So first, I have been trying to eat lion, and that just really gets rid of a lot of cravings. And that's my primary reason to be on lion is because it's kind of a cravingless thing. But when the cravings creep in, I'm my goal here would be what are my absolutes? No sugar, no grains. So if I'm gonna have a carnivore food, you know, I think sometimes those things are gonna come in and out. And then I'm just gonna kinda like Nia said, except with carnivore foods, like, they're still, like, healthy. Like, I love eggs, I could eat 25 eggs. But pork rinds, I could eat a bag of pork rinds, okay, you guys? But it's a carnivore food, so is it hurting me other than up here? So I
Mm,
guess like recently I've been having some significant hormone issues and the cravings day 1 were so strong. And I was like, "Okay,
mm,
eat a bunch of steak, eat steak, eat steak, eat steak, be full."
mhm,
Day
mm.
2, eat steak, eat steak, eat steak, be full. Day 3, it was like, "Come on now." And it turned out it was my hormones and I do have cycle issues. And so after I think it was day 5, I finally said, "Okay, give me some cheese."
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
So I had a
okay.
couple days of cheese and
Mhm.
then I evaluated and I said, "Is this what I really want in my life? Are these cravings gone now? Can we go back to the freedom and the feeling of, and so now I'm back online."
Okay.
I don't know if
And
that's helpful at all, but it's real. I see other people dipping in and out, taking
Mhm,
breaks from things that are not giving them peace.
mhm.
Sometimes they find their way back in, and then you just work on having peace every day that you can.
You know, I have to say, I don't have cravings. I have preferences, right? Real preferences. I'm very strong on preferences. And I noticed that somebody says up here, Nia's Way says she also drinks a lot of club soda and fancy glasses instead. Mine is Pellegrino in a bottle, a 25-ounce bottle. That is my ultimate jam. And I found that it can be a very addictive, like Starbucks coffee to me, right? So I cut
Really?
that. Really, I buy them by the caseload from Costco, and one in the morning, one, after work, one with dinner, and it gets kind of spendy for a beverage, right? And so, like for the last 5 days, I just went cold turkey. I go, you really don't need that bottled water. You don't need that bottled water. You just want that bottled water. So and then, like with pork rinds, I love 4505, the salted pork rinds, the plain ones, right? So, do I
Mhm.
really need them? No, but I want them. So, I don't have a lot of cravings, but I get it, girl. When you're in that hormonal turbulence area, it can get kind of crazy. But we can also
I
save that for next week's conversation too, girl. Because I'm like so far
Yeah,
past menopause, and I know you're probably dipping in that
I'm
area here and there.
perimenopause
Yeah.
bad. It's
So
bad. So I'm just
before
gonna be
we,
honest, I don't like
yeah.
people who I've seen it. They're like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm totally sober with my food. Everything's sober." And then you find out they're struggling too.
Mhm.
And so all we
Mhm.
can do is pick the foods that are the most nourishing and just do our best every single day and know ultimately I'm going to feel my best if I abstain from foods that I
Mhm.
don't have sober behavior around, but we can
Right.
talk more about that next week. You're right.
Right. Okay. Well, one more thing. Okay. So get this. At Whole Foods, I used to love shopping at Whole Foods for one reason or another, but I've wound it down to four specific items that I like from Whole Foods. And where I work out, Whole Foods is like on the next block. So this past Sunday, I went there and I got the Whole Food 365 brand of beef hot dogs. I get those every once in a while. While I was there getting it, I got some sliced cheese and some Fage, the plain yogurt, and then the 4505 pork rinds. So those are the only four things that I ever buy from there now. And as I'm standing there buying the hot dogs, I'm like, I should just go ahead and get 6 or 8 packs, leave them in the refrigerator, and then I don't have to worry about making this trip. So I ate them on Sunday. Monday, I was calling everybody and their son. I was trying to see if I could get a delivery. Guys, if you want a Whole Foods order from Amazon, it's 24 hours in advance, even to schedule a pickup. I didn't know that they changed like that. Yeah, so you can't get it the same day delivery in our area anymore. But anyway, I was willing to pay the extra $10 surcharge. I was trying to send my husband to the store to pick it up. So maybe I do have an addiction to some things because I had my daughter go buy me like 5, 6 packs, and then my husband picked them up from her house. So I have them in the refrigerator. So that's what I'm on right now, a kick of beef hot dogs for 5 or 6 days in a row. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but it's still food sober because I'm carnivore and it doesn't have any carbs in it, right? Yeah, pick your battles. So, is there any
Yes, pick
more
your
comments
battles.
that stand out in here that you would like to? Thanks, Brenda. No worries. We're glad that you're here. Um, what about you? Is there any comments in here that you want to point out before we get off?
I just that, maybe we should delete this when we're done. This was the most vulnerable I've ever been publicly.
Oh, you want to
I'm
delete
just
this?
joking.
Oh, okay. I was about to
No.
say, girl. High meeting
No,
wellness.
but it was a little bit, this is stuff
Yeah.
I haven't talked about even with some of my best friends.
Well,
But
if you
I feel
choose
like
to
it could
delete it,
be
we
out
can.
there to be helpful for other people to realize
Yeah.
it might look all good, but there's things
Yeah.
we all have to work through.
Yeah. We all have to work through, and even if we work through them, they're still bound to crop up, right? They're still
Mhm.
bound to crop up, and we can't beat ourselves up if they crop up. Just be aware of them, welcome them in, and then welcome them away. Push them away once you've dealt with them.
Mhm.
Okay. Love your transparency. Thank you, Brenda. I'm glad that this was helpful, Nia's way. And do you have any closing words, Adrian? Oh, Adrian, your interview that we had like a month or a month and a half ago is going to air tomorrow on my channel, guys. So
Oh, cool.
yes, yes. So everyone, please follow Adrienne at Biggest Loser Carnivore. She's doing some amazing things over on her YouTube channel as well as her Instagram. Please subscribe to her channel as well as subscribe to mine. Okay, because we're trying to make a difference in the world, and hopefully we will be partnering on some future projects together. But for now, we have 3 more conversations coming up, and I think we will do one 2 weeks from tonight, either on a Wednesday or Thursday, once our calendars are confirmed. And I
Yes.
appreciate everybody that's commented and that you guys are talking back and forth to each other. So, what do you have to say, Miss Adrian, before we sign off?
I'm really grateful to God that He brought me you and that we are able to hopefully help some people who also have trauma
Yeah.
and also hopefully help them come to a way of eating that makes them feel better like we have. And I'm grateful to all the people that have come today. So please, if
Yes.
you know anybody who you might find this helpful, please share. And please come
Yes.
back in 2 weeks. And thank you for
Yes.
coming.
All right, guys. So with that, we're gonna say signing out. Rose AJ, Carnivore Girl for Life, signing out. And peace, love, and hair grease, guys. All right. Thank you so
Good
much.
night.